During my doctoral program at NYU, I was trying to study, and I wrote my thesis also on the subject to understand how do you break this cycle of discrimination and poverty. I decided that Shanti Bhavan would be something else, some other model. And the model that I came up with, I felt the way to change is not from top down by government giving some handout or giving some quota system or some privilege to the so-called lower caste people for employment in government. My solution, as I saw it, came from the bottom, and that is how do you empower the poor people directly? And that solution, I felt, was through education and excellence in education, that they can compete for national exams. They should be at the 90 to 95% level ranking. If I'm able to give them that education, they succeed. So MIT, Stanford, Princeton, Duke, Dartmouth, University of Chicago, University of Rochester, you name anything, they are all there. And if you have 100 Shanti Bhavans in India, the face of India would be different.
Welcome to Mindful Businesses presented by Sarani, and I'm your host, Vidya Iyer. In our podcast, we bring to you organizations that are mindful in their practices and processes. A mindful organization is one that employs sustainable social, economic, and environmental practices. Today, we have with us Dr. Abraham Goerge, founder of Shanti Bhavan, ending the cycle of poverty through education. He joins us from Bangalore, India. Welcome, Dr. Goerge.
Thank you, Vidya. I'm happy to join.
I grew up in Mumbai, India in the 1980s, and I remember almost every evening we would have children stopping by our homes asking for our leftovers. I would run out and give them what we are left over from our dinner. Till date, that image is really hard to forget. With poverty rates in the 1980s of about 50%, India has made leaps and bounds since then. But there's a lot to be done. What are the poverty rates in India right now?
India is certainly doing well industrially. Its IT sector, where I'm very close to the city of Bangalore, which is known as the Silicon Valley of India, is contributing to that growth, the technology sector. But remember, the entire industrial base and the technology sector included probably comprise only 20, 25, 30% of the economy. It is that 20, 30% that is giving India the 5 to 6% growth rate. The other 70% is labor force, agriculture, who are not working, staying at home in the villages, and their income levels are very low. In fact, I read somewhere that 70% is earning less than certainly $5 per day for a family of four. And I would think that if you come down to $3 a day, you probably will have 40% of the population in that level of income. So it's not a very happy picture. The country as a whole, measured in terms of GNP, is doing fairly well, and it will grow. When you are talking about 20, 30%, you are talking about well over 400 million people, reasonably affluent, reasonably well off, upper middle class. 400 million is a very large number, larger than the United States. That will certainly have an impact in the marketplace, but it doesn't mean that the country as a whole is prospering.
So, how do they measure poverty levels? Of course, should be adjusted for standard of living index, India versus any other, or a living wage standard is the other thing that people talk about a lot.
Right. Living wage doesn't apply to India that much. Just to give you an idea, a person working in this part of the country, the rural India, I'm in South India right now, close enough to Bangalore, a salary of, say, $200 a month is way high. You're talking about a very small population is earning that $200 a day. Most people are below that in the rural sector. If you work in a farm and you don't have daily wages, your seasonal wage earner, then if you take it on an average basis for a year, your income will be even far lower. Initially, some years ago, that's like 30 years ago, the United Nations, the World Bank set $1 per day for a family of three as would qualify you to be above poverty level
This is in the Indian context.
in the Indian context. In fact, it's a global measure. They just put out $2 a day. Today, I've read elsewhere $3 a day as a measure. If you are below $3, then one would argue that below $2 is absolute poverty, or a dollar a day is absolute poverty, and $3 is close to what I would call poverty level. So these are some of the measures. But again, India has its own measurement. It bases on how many calories of food do you eat in a day, things like that, rather than dollar measurements. But whichever way you take it, there is a very large population. More than 50% of the people are in that bracket of poverty.
So you grew up in Trivandrum, Kerala, a really, really beautiful state, which has near 100% literacy, right? In most cities. And, it's very unique for India, especially. Then you joined the army, spent time there, and went abroad. Talk about how long were you away from India and what drew you back? So let's talk about how long were you away and what was your career before you started Shanti Bhavan?
As you said, I grew up until the age of 14 in Trivandrum. And then I was admitted to an elite officers training academy. It's similar to Sandhurst or West Point in the United States, where they train you for Army and Navy and Air Force too. I went through 4 years of training to become an officer. And then I was posted in the Himalayas bordering China. In fact, I was posted to an altitude of 14,000 feet above sea level, of course. And we were protecting by guns being placed there against a possible Chinese invasion. This all happened soon after the initial Chinese invasion in 1962. So I'm an old timer. I was there for a while, for 11 months, digging bunkers, soldiers blasting the rocks and so on. And in one of the accidents, I was blown up by a dynamite explosion. Because I noticed that detonator reaching the gun caught on dynamite just in time, I turned around and jumped, and I escaped death, but I was badly injured. After recovery, I spent my time on the Pakistan side of the border. That is another 2.5 years. So by the time I was 21, going on to 22, I was able to get out of the military, because by then I had decided that military career was not for me. Though I was a very successful officer, having risen to the rank of captain in a very short time, I realized that this is not my calling. I need to devote my life to a cause. The cause being two things. First is the social discrimination that Dalits and other so-called lower castes endure, and I need to do something about it. And the second was through that process of trying to reduce discrimination, by the way, through education, and I'll get to that in a minute, reduce poverty for them as well as their families, and hopefully in the long run, through a multiplicative effect for a lot more people. So that was my mission. And I spent some 25 years in America with my own company and made some money. I sold all my businesses in America and came to India 30 years ago.
That's quite a journey. So you've seen every possible gamut of what life can bring. You've seen war, you've seen, you had a successful career and got a PhD from the NYU Stern School of Business and had a career in finance, and now come back to what you feel is your roots.
Yes, which I feel is my duty, the cause that I embraced. I sold my business at the peak of its growth, consulting engagements and many other things. I got rid of everything. I'd made some good money, and I thought I'll return and start Shanti Bhavan. Other projects, I had been involved in several of them. One of them being, I don't know, you are aware of that, the lead poisoning prevention in India. I came to India, I found the streets were polluted, and I discovered that lead was still being used in gasoline. So I went back, got together with CDC, World Bank, WHO, US EPA, name everyone. I was trained to test for blood levels in children. I came back with a lot of equipment, and 9 hospitals were equipped with that. And we tested some 20,000 children in 9 major cities in India and discovered that half the children in urban areas were having lead levels higher than permitted. Went on a campaign to convince the government. Government didn't know anything about lead poisoning. We campaigned the oil companies, which were the largest polluters. They were using lead in gasoline. And then we held an international conference in 1999 in Bangalore, where 25 countries came to attend. At that conference, to our surprise, 3 managing directors of the 3 largest oil companies turned up. At the last minute, they turned up to announce that within 18 months they will remove lead from gasoline. So India became lead free as far as gasoline goes in year 2000, middle of 2000. So that's one of the projects I had taken, and there are several others for improving the lives of people in the villages, apart from the Shanti Bhavan, which is for children, as education. So a number of projects I embarked on. I'm still continuing some of them, and that has been my last 30 years.
In India, even to date, I think two-thirds of the population is in the rural areas, right?
Yes, that is correct.
So let's focus on Shanti Bhavan. What was there one trigger to start this organization? Was there an aha moment, or is just a gradual, journey which led up to Shanti Bhavan?
Right. As I said, I returned to India to deal with poverty and social discrimination. During my doctoral program at NYU, I was trying to study, and I wrote my thesis also on the subject, to understand how do you break this cycle of discrimination and poverty. At that time, the World Bank and others were putting out statistics on how many people are literate. Literate being some government bureaucrat, some surveyor goes to a village and asks to count 1 to 5 or show a post and read it. And he could do that, he was called literate. So the statistics that were being put out were very, very misleading. They are not employable by any means for the education they have had. And rural schools were run by the government, and they were in such a bad condition. Physically, they were broken down. No toilets. Girls come to school for until 10 o'clock and they run home because they can't use the toilet because it doesn't have doors. And the teachers were absent. I mean, 2 or 3 grades were combined into one room and they sit on the floor, and the teacher who's really not qualified would teach them. It wasn't going anywhere. They were not going to have any real success in an industrial world. They certainly work in the farm because that is their natural capability. They see their parents working. So I decided that Shanti Bhavan would be something else, some other model. And the model that I came up with during my studies at NYU and elsewhere during my business career, I felt the way to change is not from top down by government giving some handout or giving some quota system or some privilege to the so-called lower caste people for employment in government and so on. That might give them a job, they can earn something more, but that's not a solution because their children will still remain in the same hut and the cycle will continue. My solution, as I saw it, came from the bottom, and that is how do you empower the poor people directly? Not wait for any privilege from or anything that the government offers. And that solution, I felt, was through education and excellence in education, similar to what people in the upper middle class or in the affluent society get by going to good schools, and then they are eligible for good colleges. So I have to bring them up from a very early age, maybe 4 years of age, and offer them excellence in education, that they can compete for national exams for an accreditation like ISE and ICSE, the topmost accreditation in India. I mean, you have IB programs and others which are more of European models. But India offers those two. There are state accreditations, but this is a central accreditation. You have to take a national exam in ISC, ICSC. They should be at the 90 to 95% level ranking nationally. How do you get that? If you get that, you can get into any good college in India. Then from there, you can get good jobs in companies, top world multinationals. That opportunity is what I have to give. If I'm able to give them that education, they succeed in the marketplace. Later on, they work for companies like Microsoft and they would earn high income. They'll improve the lives of their families. They will bring up their siblings. They in turn help others. And this multiplicative effect of that will be tremendous. It's not one person you are educating, the impact will be multiplicative. And that was the model I saw.
You, of course, would be familiar with C.K. Prahalad's Bottom of the Pyramid as a tool for economic growth. And like you just described, two-thirds of the world's population is at the bottom of the pyramid. If we target them and educate them, the results will be multifold than trying to just pick the privileged few. But what I do like about what you said is that we often think that in India, quote unquote, of reservation, or the US, affirmative action, now the word is DEI, is the only way to uplift a group or include a group. But you felt that was not the only way. You felt that you should empower them and bring them to the stage with authority, not by set asides, shall we say.
Right. Handouts, not on merit, but quotas. You know, people get admission in colleges and they get jobs because of that in government and enterprises. It's not going to really help them in a big way. They are not qualified for those jobs really, and they don't necessarily succeed in that environment. But if they are able to get admissions in good colleges and they're able to get jobs in great companies on merit, because they have had excellent education and they are absolutely deserving, then they will be able to perform very well wherever they go. And if you had 100 Shanti Bhavans throughout India, I feel, you know, you have some 10 or 15 IIT, Indian Institute of Technologies, and we are talking about how wonderful they have performed in America and elsewhere. And if you have 100 Shanti Bhavans in India, the face of India would be different. In a very short time, it will turn out thousands of young people who will make a difference to the country.
So let's delve into the operations of Shanti Bhavan. You set up a school in a rural area, like a physical school, or do you provide some services to a government school or some other school that exists there?
Oh, I wouldn't venture providing service to government schools and expect something to happen. No, no, the Shanti Bhavan School, it's totally independent of the government. In fact, we don't accept money from the government. We want to be able to offer the best program, the best curriculum, best education, and all-round education. There are two aspects to it. One is it's not enough that you offer education, you know, textbooks, that's what Indian system is. You have to mug up or you have to learn the textbooks which are part of the syllabus. You know, they're tested very rigorously and if they do well, that's great. But I felt that was not enough. The children have to be brought up to be able to move in any society. So my model is that they are taken into the school at the age of 4 based on several criteria. They have to be below the poverty level, the family. Single mothers are given more preference for their children, and they should be willing to send their kids at the age of 4. They have to stay with us for 10 months in a year, 2 months they go home. All these things are there because you return to a home that is dysfunctional and the child is learning something else. You know, the families themselves are in a deplorable condition. There could be violence. The wife is set on fire by the husband for some reason or the other. The child has witnessed that. Violence against women of other nature. theft. They see father coming back with stolen vegetables from the neighbor's farm. Any number of things, lying. If you grow up like that, just an education is not going to do anything. First of all, they have no chance to recover from the trauma they have experienced through their lives. And secondly, their value system is so miserable that for them to succeed in a modern society, in these companies which have certain standards, they can't do it. We bring them up in our school, bring them up not just leadership qualities and communication skills, interpersonal, abilities, social grace, and name anything. We coach them, but we also try to give them a good foundation. Both universally accepted values like truthfulness, transparency, or forthrightness, all these kinds of things you have to give globally shared values that everybody accepts. But we also need to bring in them humane values, which schools are not equipped to do that. Kindness, generosity,
Empathy.
yeah, humility, and these are not, they are left to parents to do, and these parents are not capable of doing it. And so we undertake that. So my hope is the children who graduate from Shanti Bhavan will be quote unquote better human beings. They would have embraced many of these values. I can't be 100% sure whether they'll go back into something else, but at least they know what is right and what is wrong and to do always the right thing. That is one of our goals, and that is possible when we spend 24 hours a day for 10 months in a year with us. We are able to bring them up like that. Apart from, as I said, leadership and other qualities will allow them to function effectively in any environment. Good communication skills. If you talk to any of my kids, you will find that they are just as polished, just as fluent in the language and their ability to communicate as some of the kids from top schools. So it's an all-round education, the three pillars being excellent education, the curriculum, leadership and communication skills, and the third one being humane values.
How many Shanti Bhavans are there in India right now?
Well, we have two. We opened a second one, and we are hoping that in the next few years we'll have a third one. But this cannot be scaled up by us alone.
Of course.
Others who have the financial means can learn from us. We can teach them what we do, and they can run the program slightly differently or whatever it is. But the principles by which it is run, that they can't violate. For example, equality. Everyone is equal. You have to treat, whether you came from Dalit or otherwise, you have to treat them equally well. And in our case, we'll not accept anyone above $3 a day in family income. So, if they mix it up with children from affluent homes, you're going to have cultural problems, differences, and some coming in designer clothes and others coming, without those kinds of privileges. If those who want to start Shanti Bhavan, we'll be happy to introduce them to what we do, but they have to demonstrate first that they are willing to invest the kind of money that's needed to start Shanti Bhavan and run it. And secondly, they believe in these values of equality, freedom, non-religious orientation. You don't promote one religion over another. Those kinds of things have to be acceptable to them for us to be involved.
That was my next question. Are these schools secular, or are they, like Dalai Lama once said in a speech that I heard, in India, secularism is accepting of all religions, which is actually not what is defined in the Oxford Dictionary. So it's actually Dalai Lama once said that in a speech when somebody asked him about secularism. He said, a friend of mine who's Indian, they think secularism is inclusive of all religions. So how would you define your school?
We would define as secular, that's a word everybody understands. So I'll confine to that. We have a prayer hall. All major religious books are displayed next to each other in the chapel, this prayer hall. and people are free to come in, children are free to come in and pray, but silently. You can't pray loud. You can't sing some verse from one religious book while another is reading something else loudly. That's not permissible. Everyone has to pray silently. They can go back to their residence and continue that prayer if they want to, but in public arena they can't. The result is that, and we talk about the origin and history of various religions, what the faith is all about, all that we educate them, but we don't need to do that on a regular basis. Maybe once a year we talk about Hinduism or Christianity and Islam and so on. And children understand how the religion originated and what are the values and how people worship and the rituals. They understand all that. We celebrate various religious events in the sense it's a fun day. That's all about it. Nothing more than that.
And the kids are away from home, so when they were home, they would have celebrated either Diwali or
Correct.
the Muslim festivals of Ramadan.
Never actually. Talk about our religious differences. Most of us, or at least I don't know what religion a kid belongs to. I never asked that question. So are the kids. They are not interested in knowing that. And secondly, they are not allowed to carry any symbols that point that out. For example, Christians who wear a cross, no, they can't wear that cross. They have to tuck it inside their blouses. Or Hindus, they can't put all this stuff on their forehead and go around. Or shave their heads because your grandfather died. No, you can't look different from others. You have to comb your hair. Things like that. So nobody can tell which religion you belong to. And we live peacefully as a result.
And you feel that is important to create a cohesive society. Religion should be a private part of you and should not change how you learn or interact with the others.
Exactly.
It is a point of view. Some people say it's part of culture. It should be part of everyday life. But in your environment, to bring people together, so,
We have all religions. We have several religious children, and we can't be doing this. Catholics will ask for catechism classes on every Sunday. All this stuff, we can't be doing those things.
right. How many have graduated thus far? So I assume that it's from kindergarten to 12th standard.
Yeah, number of years have passed. Several have graduated. There are something like 250 kids in the marketplace today. There's some 300 plus children are right now in Shanti Bhavan 1. Shanti Bhavan 2 has 60 children. We take only 30 for in a class. So 2 grades are there, kindergarten and preschool. Remember, we take only at the age of 3.5 to 4. So each year our population keeps increasing. It's not like we take all grades. We don't do that. We have to bring them up from the beginning. So it'll take a little time for Shanti Bhavan to be fully populated. When it's fully populated, it'll be like 350 plus children in the school. It's not the numbers game. It is the personal attention we give them. Classes are no more than 25 to 30 maximum. And as a result, the teachers are able to give individual attention to the children.
So then we talk about resources, right? You said if somebody else wanted to start it, what would be the investment that a person who wants to start a Shanti Bhavan need? Or how much did you think, or how much did you put in when you started Shanti Bhavan?
Shanti Bhavan 1 and Shanti Bhavan 2 are on 30 acres each of land. Nowadays, if you are in the city, that will cost you quite a bit of money.
Right.
That alone will cost you 20, $30 million. Some of the land prices are exorbitant. We are outside the city. And Shanti Bhavan 1, I was able to acquire at a very reasonable price. In my case, Shanti Bhavan 1, I haven't counted it. Some $20 million I put in to establish the infrastructure and equip the school and, chairs, tables, piano, name everything is here. But no luxury, very simple way of living. And food, everything is very simple. A vegetarian most part, one day there is non-vegetarian food. I feel that today, if you get the land, which if you're lucky, you can find the land somewhere outside the city where it is reasonable. I'm just thinking, 1 acre of land can be anywhere over $1 million. Okay, so 30 acres, that alone is $30 million. So you have to find something even further out where it is maybe only $200,000. In our case, 30 acres, that is 6 million right there. It depends on where you establish. The further you go, there are logistical problems and, those kinds of things.
Do you require that such a large piece of land in India? Land, there is a lot of pressure on it because just the basic number of people who live in India. So can your model be scaled to like two buildings or three buildings, in like a 2 acre plot?
We have 20 buildings or 30 buildings in that 30 acres of land. Each grade has its own residence where the so called aunties or caregivers live with the children. And so you have 14 grades. That itself is 14 buildings. Then you have the school building. Then boys have to be separated from girls at a higher age. So you have two buildings for each grade. Then you have so many other foundations, main office building, facilities building, prayer hall. There's so many different buildings come in. It's not the buildings alone, what you have on the ground. We have soccer fields, basketball fields, places for bicycling, all those kind of things. And then, very important, we are self-sustaining. Everything we eat, vegetables, we grow. And many of the lentils we grow ourselves on our own fields. We have our own cows which produce the milk and the paneer or cheese that is made from it. We have our own hens and ducks. So when you start adding space for all those things and for nice garden and all of that, it adds up to easily 25 to 30 acres. And you want it to look good.
So basically, it's a full transformation. It's not just you're creating a whole community, a whole complex for these kids to be, nurtured and have a completely different. That's the reason you're able to have some success stories, because I read somewhere that some of your students have gone to some very difficult colleges to get into, like Stanford and maybe MIT.
So MIT, Stanford, Princeton, Duke, Dartmouth, University of Chicago, University of Rochester, you name anything, they are all there. Imagine, it has never happened in the history of India. Children from these one-room huts, which never had a kitchen or a toilet, lived on less than $2 to $3 a day, ending up in Stanford. Imagine what a transformation that is. And how did it happen? It just doesn't happen by just giving some education. And they do very well in these colleges too.
What are your next steps? What are your goals? Who will carry your torch that you have started?
That's a very intuitive question. I don't live forever, right?
I didn't mean it in that way. I meant like we need to scale this. You have a formula.
Right.
You have over the years tweaked it and but like you said, you cannot do it by yourself. So who will go on with this mission?
We have a very good team of people. There are 150 staff members working here. And some of them at the top managerial level, others in the middle, and others, slightly lower positions. But the reason they are here is their commitment to the cause. I can't offer them the kind of salaries that private enterprises in Bangalore can offer. But these people have worked here 15, 20, 25 years with me, and they won't leave because they believe in what they're doing and they have a commitment to doing a good job. So let me just say this also, staff is more difficult than the children. Children are a piece of cake. You can mold them. You can really educate them. You can mold them. You can make them great human beings. But staff who are older people, older means in their 20s, 30s, and so on, who come here, they have set ways, and to change them, it's a challenge. But we have been able to do that with our own way of dealing, which is forthright contact, keeping your word, always treating them with care, and yet disciplined. You are able to keep the staff.
It must be a challenge, of course, because you're set in the rural areas to be able to get the talent and retain them would probably be a very onerous and not easy task.
Yeah, you're right. We are not looking for employees, Harvard educated, and so on. Most of our people have just gone through a high school or undergraduate. That's about it from not so great schools. But the training they get here in a few years, they are excellent. And what we ultimately need is people who have a commitment to their work and who will then keep their word and do the honestly. That is the population we are looking for.
So, what would you say your overhead costs are? So, you're set up as a nonprofit, I'm assuming, and the metric when anybody donates to a nonprofit, or they have this ratio of what percent of the donations are used for administrative costs. So, what do you think would be a percent that goes to the programs, and what goes towards the administration of the nonprofit?
Our overall cost right now, the operating expense is close to $1 million for both schools combined. Some 8 crores plus $1 million. Someone may say for 400 children, that's a lot of money. Not really. Talking about 2,000 plus dollars per annum in terms of programming costs. There are so many other costs, capital costs and so on, which are slightly different outside of the operating costs. We don't forget we are providing food, we are providing medical care, we are providing residential care, all those things. It's not an education alone. It's not a day school. You come at 9 and leave at 3 o'clock and you just pay the teachers and that's it. That's not what it is. Here, looking after human beings, you know how hard it is to bring up one child in a home and imagine 400 kids. Every day, some kid is sick, with some ailment. It is $1 million. Then every 25 years, you have to improve the buildings. They'll break down here and there, leaks are there. So you need certain capital expenditures for maintenance. That's separate. But that's not a every year cost. That's only occasionally.
Those are operational costs, either capital or everyday costs. If I donate $100 to Shanti Bhavan, are you saying that the whole $100 goes to the programming and there are no administrative costs that are taken out of it?
The administrative costs, as we defined, the people needed for compliance with the government, filing tax returns, having lawyers to represent you if there is a legal problem.
Probably this question is not relevant for you because I think it seems that almost 100% goes to programming, whereas in some cases they have like an executive director who administers these grants and then they receive the grants. So they are justified costs, but there is sort of this percent that everybody talks about. But in your case, it seems like almost 100% goes towards the direct costs of running.
Almost, if you don't include those in the administrative, then 100% goes to programming. The vice principal, for example, has administrative responsibilities too, but she's running the school.
Right.
The CEO or the chief administrative officer has to do banking transactions. That's part of, I don't know whether it's administration or operating, but if you call it operating expenses, you have to make the donations, you have a CSR, they have to go and corporate social responsibility, you have to seek money from corporations. We have to have, 3, 4 people who are calling all these companies and asking them to help us. If that's part of the programming, then we don't have any non-programming costs.
Shanti Bhavan is unique because it's not just education, it is a method of living, it's an art of living. How is it different?
The children need to grow up knowing there is a right way to live. And that is, you have to live with the nature. You have to take care of the environment. You can't pollute everything. You have to be energy efficient. You have to be clean, all these things. Just so that in 1995, when I first started in rural area, the electricity was not readily available. Power lines were some distance away. And even then, blackouts and brownouts. Brownout being electricity doesn't have the power to run machines or anything. Only at night they get the power. Things of that kind. We decided the whole campus will be run solar. I had a hard time finding solar panels. I finally bought it from British Petroleum. that was selling solar panels and solar systems. In 95, hardly anyone using solar energy. Today, of course, everybody talking about it. Both our campuses are 100% solar. We don't use conventional electricity. All the lights that are on, they're all driven by solar. Computers, even deep wells are run by solar power. So that's the first thing. And the children learn the beauty of living in an environment where the lights are on 24 hours because the batteries are charged during daytime and night, if put on the switch, they get lights. So that's one. Secondly, in Shanti Bhavan, plastics are not allowed. Nobody can cross the gates. The security guard will stop you if you came with a plastic bag. You can bring plastic products that have a life of at least 2 or 3 years. An example will be a bucket, plastic bucket. Of course, you can bring. Or a large container that has oil. Yeah, we can't bring it in paper bags. Those exceptions are made, but staff or no one can come with some Indian sweets wrapped in some plastic bags. No, that's not allowed. Third, the whole farm is totally organic. As I told you, we have cows that provide enough milk for all our children, and we make paneer or cheese from that. Then the cows give you the byproduct, which is the cow dung, and that's a lot for the farm. So we don't put chemical fertilizer in any of them. Then pesticide, we don't use them. We grow neem trees and the neem seeds. We have our own formula. We mix it with a number of other herbal products and ferment it for 2-3 months. And the liquid is so strong that if you spray on trees, nothing will come. Coconut trees and so on. There's no disease in the coconut tree if you spray it every 3-4 months. Sewage water is processed not sufficiently well. We are now working on a more modern technology for processing the sewage water. So we don't waste water. But even today, the sewage water is reasonably processed, but we only use it for trees which are at a distance from the dorms because we don't want children to walk on that water. But we conserve water a great deal. Every child has to have a bath in half a bucket of water, not in a full bucket of water, wasting water. We rely on deep wells. We don't tap the government water supply system. We have our own water and we have water conservation, pits where the rainwater is collected. So on and on, every aspect of living in an environmentally sustainable manner is what we do every day. And that's part of our lifestyle. No great philosophy of any kind, just live correctly. Children enjoy doing it and life goes on.
That beautiful statement. Thank you so much, Dr. George, for coming on Mindful Businesses. Wishing you all the best in all your endeavors.
Thank you, Vidya, for inviting me to your program. I was excited when I saw that you are thinking about there's a better way to run businesses, and that excited me.
Thank you again. You're listening to Mindful Businesses, produced and hosted by Vidya Iyer. We would love to hear from you. Send us an email at info@mindfulbusinessespodcast.com. If you learned a thing or two from this episode, share it with one friend. Click on the subscribe button to be the first to learn about our latest episode. We recorded this podcast in Alappuzha, Kerala. The theme music was composed by Tatum Gale. Roxanne Korean is our marketing assistant. Ketan Karat is our podcast editor. Our advisors are Jim Stone and Anupama Pastrija. This is Vidya Iyer with Mindful Businesses.